If there's one thing that kept us entertained throughout the whole F1 summer break, that has to be the Piastri McLaren Alpine saga. It has been one of the most interesting and probably most unique situations that ever happened in F1, and now that it has finally come to an end, we can tell you more about it and how it started, how and why it has ended this way, and what's next for all of the sides involved. So buckle up because it's gonna be a long and a bumpy ride. First, it all started with Vettel's announcement of retirement. Prior to that, we believed that Alonso would continue his deal with Alpine because where else could he go? Even on multiple occasions, Alonso said that the continuation of the deal with Alpine is just a formality, as they'll have to negotiate some simple details. However, one spot has opened up in Aston Martin, and although that market is far less competitive as of now compared to Alpine, they had something Alonso wanted, and Alpine wasn't ready to give him 3 years of the contract. This is why he negotiated a deal with the British-based team, and according to Otmar Szafnauer, Alpine CEO, they found out about this from the media and not from Alonso himself. They used Oscar Piastri as a bargaining chip with Alonso, waiting to offer him a 1+1 deal, but Alonso wasn't keen on that kind of agreement and grabbed the first opportunity that was presented to him. Alpine didn't want too long and announced Piastri as their starting driver from 2023. However, the young Aussie has quickly denied this on Twitter, saying that he wouldn't drive for the team from the next season because the decision they made wasn't with his consent. Now, why would a 21-year-old driver refuse a seat in the best of the rest team on the grid? One high possibility is that he has negotiated a deal with another strong team, in this case McLaren. Prior to all of this saga unwinding down as it did, Alpine had a plan to send Piastri to Williams in a deal that would see the British team using Renault's engines as part of the deal. In Piastri's contract, Alpine said that they will secure a seat for him in F1, whether that is in the senior team or in the Alpine-affiliated team, which is what Williams would have become if the deal went through. It was highly unlikely from the beginning of the saga that Piastri denied a deal with Alpine to drive for Williams, and all eyes were pointed out towards McLaren. However, the team was still under contract obligations with Ricciardo, and what was even more worrying for them is that Ricciardo was the only side that could break the deal. This is why the situation became a little bit tricky in McLaren, as Ricciardo said on multiple occasions that he is ready to commit to McLaren in the remainder of the season and make things work in 2023 and beyond. But when the opportunity of Piastri was presented to the working-based team, they just couldn't resist but jump right into it. After all, Piastri is a promising young talent and someone that will make the team competitive yet again, at least they hope so. With Ricciardo, especially in 2022, the team has been nothing less than a one-man show, with Norris bringing almost all of the points and keeping the team alive in the Constructors' Championship battle with Alpine for P4. Now, they seem to have lost that battle, and although there are 7 races remaining, it seems like McLaren will have to settle with P5 and have another go in the 2023 season. But how did Ricciardo and McLaren end up their relationship? It was one hell of an awkward situation, and truly an awkward conversation that's to be concluded. Ricciardo has asked around $21 million in buyout terms if he was to get released from the team, and given the fact that he is the only side that can do this, it was nothing unusual from his side. However, it seems like both sides have agreed to $15 million in buyout terms, and the fact that they did this prior to the CRB ruling out Piastri's eligibility with either one of the teams just shows that McLaren kind of knew that Piastri will drive for them in the next season. This brings us to the next point, Alpine's connection with Piastri. The French-based team believed that they have every right to their reserve driver, given the fact that they've invested so much money and intelligence in him. Not just that, he won the F3 and the F2 championships behind Alpine's mentorship, and his move was labelled as a lack of integrity one, not just from Szafnauer but from Toto Wolff as well. On the other hand, McLaren also received a backlash on social media, as it seems like they've done a deal with Piastri prior to ending up things with Daniel Ricciardo, with the 8-time race winner still being under contract from the team and not being alerted as to what's happening. So the CRB has ruled out in favour of McLaren because it seems like they signed a deal with Piastri on the 4th of July. This came as a huge shock because initially Alpine was the one to blame since they missed the deadline to sign and announce Piastri as their starting driver, which was on the 31st of July. Now it seems like the 21-year-old, along with his manager Mark Webber, who is also a former F1 driver, negotiated a deal with Alpine's fiercest rival, kind of wanting to take a jab at the Enstone-based team for treating Piastri the way they did and not allowing him to race in 2022. But why is Alpine to be blamed in this whole situation? because as initial agreement has been said to be sent between Piastri and Alpine on the 15th of November 2021, that Piastri would have the role of reserve driver in 2022 and a starting driver in 2023 in either Alpine or Alpine-affiliated team. No such agreement was forthcoming in the following period, either for the reserve deal or the starting race contract, which is why the frustration started to grow between Webber and Piastri towards the Alpine team. When the legal team was included in this, it became evident that things aren't progressing with the flow that Piastri and Webber would want it to, initially being blamed on bottlenecks in the system caused by a lack of resources and then further delays as the team prepared for the launch of its new car. Furthermore, Webber asked for the new agreement to come yet again on the 1st of March prior to the season opener in Bahrain. He was promised that the contract would be given to him later on the 2nd of March, but 2 days later he was sent a draft reserve driver agreement with a note that details of an F1 agreement for 2023 to 2024 would follow as early as the following week. The agreement did not land, and with the F1 season looming, it became evident that things aren't looking as smooth as one would expect. The reserve driver agreement wasn't signed between Alpine and Piastri, and Alpine sent to the CRB on the 14th of March a document containing the November 2021 terms sheet signed by both parties. On top of this, the team added a label to the top stating it has a legally binding heads of terms, even though what was supposed to be an attached contract in a separate sealed envelope was not signed and did not feature these words. This terms sheet was also crucially headed subject to contract and laid out the likely plan for Piastri to be a reserve driver for 1 year before a potential seat in 2023. The timeline laid out for Piastri was to race for Williams in 2023, then in 2024 he would either stay in Williams or come to Alpine, depending on how the situation unwinds down with Alonso. For 2025 and 2026, Piastri would have a deal with Alpine, and it was something that he couldn't accept given the fact that the short-term vision of the team with Piastri was nowhere to be found. This is why a preliminary deal agreement was signed between McLaren and Piastri on the 4th of June. It was initially an unspecified role for 2023, just in case Ricciardo stayed on, but obviously with the intention being that Piastri would step up if a separation took place. Both sides were satisfied with the fact that there were no rights to his services elsewhere, based on Alpine only having that subject to contract term sheet lodged at the CRB. On top of that, talks with Ricciardo accelerated to head in the clear direction of parting ways, which is why Piastri's final race contract was signed on the 4th of July, subject to there being a vacancy for him. So in the end, the CRB was unanimous when it came to the deal. The term sheet being labelled subject to contract meant it was far from being valid, and with nothing else having been launched by Alpine, the obvious conclusion was that McLaren was the only team with a genuine contract for 2023 and beyond. On top of this, the Alpine team argued to the CRB that the Australian should swallow his own legal fees of more than £120,000 as they felt he was not a party to the proceedings. This was rejected by the CRB, who stated that he had every right to be represented. A further complaint from Alpine about the cost of McLaren's legal representatives being excessive was also thrown out, as the French team has to settle all the financial disputes of this saga. So what's next for all the parties? Piastri has signed a contract with McLaren for 2023 and 2024, and although many would bash him for not showing integrity to the team that raised him to this point, he wouldn't have been offered a seat in Alpine hadn't it been for the retirement of Alonso. Alpine's seat is still left empty as we speak, and although Ricciardo is the one that could sit in it, there are names like Gasly and Mick emerging from the dark. In recent reports and updates, it has been said that the Enstone-based team has emerged in more serious talks with Gasly, and they would bring the Frenchman on board if the requirements from AlphaTauri's side are met, which is bringing Colton Herta aboard as a replacement for the Frenchman. It's highly disturbing to see what's currently happening to Ricciardo, but in all fairness, he did this to himself. His lack of performance as well as the car not performing as it should all brought to the fact that he could very well sit out the 2023 season with the money he's offered and seek for a 2024 seat. We shall see which seats will remain open then, but until then, it's highly unlikely that he'll emerge and drive for another team. One huge factor for that is that no team other than Alpine would be willing or empowered to give him the $15 million from the buyout terms, money that he's guaranteed to receive in 2023. What do you think about this saga? Which side are you on? Let us know in the comments below.